You ready, Nikki? All right. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm here today to give the latest updates on Oregon's fire situation. First, let me acknowledge that flags are at half-staff today in memory of those who perished on this day, September 11th, 19 years ago. We had incredibly brave first responders running toward the danger and fires then, and we see that heroism again today in Oregon. I'm joined on the phone by the Oregon Department of Forestry Fire Chief Doug Graff, Oregon Chief Deputy Fire Marshal Mariana Ruiz Temple, General Michael Stencil, Office of Emergency Management Director Andrew Phelps, and the Oregon Health Authority Environmental Public Health Section Manager Gabriella Goldfarb. Let me start with some good news today. The weather system fueling these fires over the past few days has finally broken down, and our firefighting teams tell me they can feel it. We anticipate cooler air and moisture coming in the next few days, which is really good news. Still, firefighters continue to work around the clock to save lives and property from destruction. Well over 1 million acres of land has burned, which is over 1,500 square miles. Right now, our air quality ranks the worst in the world due to these fires. Almost anywhere in the state you can feel this right now. I have directed the Oregon Health Authority and Oregon OSHA to issue a recommendation to protect outdoor workers from exposure to harmful wildfire smoke. This will aim to eliminate or minimize outside work in places with unhealthy air quality. OHA also recommends that if you're in an area affected by smoke and ash, you should restrict your physical activity and stay indoors with the windows and doors closed to the greatest extent possible. More than 40,000 Oregonians have been evacuated, and approximately 500,000 Oregonians are currently in evacuation zones. That means 500,000 people are either at a level 1, 2, or 3 evacuation alert. Level 1 means to pack up valuables and monitor the situation. Level 2 means to get ready to evacuate on a moment's notice if needed. And level 3 means leave immediately. I can't say this enough. If you are notified by emergency officials to evacuate, please do so immediately. You may not get a second chance. At the same time, if you have not gotten a level 3 alert, remember that's the one that tells you to immediately go. Please monitor your situation closely, but do not panic or try to leave immediately. We need to make sure that the roads stay open for those who are in urgent fire zones. I also implore all Oregonians to stay out of the fire zones right now. I know that rumors of looting are extremely alarming and that it's unsettling not to know whether your home is still standing. Let me assure you that we have the Oregon National Guard and our Oregon State Police monitoring the situation and preventing looting. However, if you try to go back, you are not only putting your own life at risk, but also those of firefighters and first responders who may have to rescue you. I must make this request to media as well. To all our reporters and media outlets, thank you for so quickly and diligently informing the public of this urgent and evolving situation. Right now, I ask that you too stay away from fire zones so that our first responders can do their jobs. Thank you. I know it's been a rough few days. Many Oregonians are suffering right now, whether displaced themselves or worried about their families and communities while watching our beautiful state burn. We are doing everything we can to fight these fires. Teams on the ground, are showing incredible creativity and innovation in addressing this crisis and getting Oregonians the help that they need. Yesterday evening, we learned that our federal emergency declaration was approved. This is good news. It will bring much needed federal aid to Oregon, including additional firefighting resources, search and rescue, and assistance for temporary housing for those who've been displaced. As of now, there are early reports from our state police that there are dozens of missing persons related to the fires, specifically in Jackson, Lane, and Marion counties. We will keep you updated as we gather more information. I'm grateful to be able to offer some improving news today, and even more grateful for the acts of love and support I'm seeing in every community across our entire state. Even in the darkest of times, Oregonians step up to help one another in extraordinary ways. Like Sarah in Molalla, she was forced to leave her home and evacuate with her kids. Once safe, she returned to deliver water to firefighters on the front lines. I've been told that there have been so many donations to the Expo Center in Jackson County that they had to ask people to stop donating. The center is filled with mountains of blankets, pillows, and supplies. Restaurants like Conway's in Springfield and La Margarita in Salem are providing free hot meals to Oregonians impacted by the fire. That's what we do in Oregon. We take care of one another. And this is what gives me confidence that we will get through this and we will be stronger for it. Thank you so much for taking care of each other. Thank you to our firefighters, our National Guard members, and our Red Cross volunteers. And please remember, you can visit wildfire.oregon.gov or your local agency emergency management's website for the latest updates in your community. With that, I'm going to turn it over to our Fire Chief, Doug Graff. Doug, it's all yours.
Thank you, Governor. I'll report out today on the weather, which is good news coming our way. I'll speak to 16 large fires that we have across the landscape where our attention is focused, and then turn it back to Governor Brown for the flow for the meeting next. First of all, great news on the front relative to weather. We've been speaking of the unprecedented weather event that's unfolded before us starting Monday this week. That has passed. No longer are we under those strong east wind impacts that have moved all these fires across the landscape. We're currently in a westerly flow from the ocean that brings lower temperatures. I imagine many of you feeling that today. Cooler temperatures along with moisture in the air help the firefight. It'll put us in a position to move from just life safety to the offense against these fires. This condition will carry through the weekend, so this is positive firefighting weather for 3 days. It'll continue into next week with even more favorable conditions. We're growing with more confidence that we'll have moisture coming across the state, in particularly west of the Cascades. So that's a very favorable forecast, and we'll see if that comes to fruition. But the discussion is in the range to a quarter of an inch to an inch west of the Cascades, and that'll be a huge benefit for us. We're under a smoke inversion that is expected to stay for much of the state. We may get windows of clean air, but generally speaking, smoke inversion in place. What that does is put a cap over intense fire activity, but it also limits our ability to fly aviation assets. Now I'll move to the fire conditions across the landscape, those 16 fires I spoke to. I'll start with the Riverside fires, the Riverside fire, the Beachy fire, and the Lion's Head that are all burning east of Clackamas County, Marion counties, up the Santiam Gorge. This is a dramatic fire environment. This is where we've seen some of the most dramatic fire growth in the state. Combined acreage across these fires is in the range of 440,000 acres. They stretch from Warm Springs to Estacada, which is a span of approximately 56 miles. We have not seen the likes of this fire in this state, this integrated with our communities ever before. We have a tremendous workload ahead of us. Our primary mission is to maintain control lines that we have been establishing and establish new containment lines, particularly on the west side of that fire, before it continues to encroach into Estacada, Colton, Malala, Scott Mills, Mayans communities. Push those containment lines and clear the highways up the Santiam Highway, up through the top of the Cascades, so we can gain access and improve containment lines there. This is conversations I have not been speaking about for the past 4 days, establishing and maintaining containment lines, and the weather is going to be favorable for us. We have a tremendous amount of resources rolling our direction from states across the country to support that effort, along with military assets and then the local assets we have. Moving south, we have the Holiday Farm Fire, and that's in the Mackenzie Highway system, sitting about 156,000 acres. Absolutely impressive work in the last 48 hours on this fire. We have anchored control lines on the east side of the fire, a significant portion on the west side of the fire, working to tie control lines on the north and south side of that fire. A heavy effort of local forest landowner equipment, absolutely instrumental in that firefight and making tremendous progress there. Once again, continued focus on opening those highway corridors so we can triage the loss and gain access for internal control lines and continue to fight fire internally and across the perimeter of those fires to minimize fire spread. Moving south to the Umpqua Highway, we have the Archie Fire sitting about 115,000 acres, establishing containment lines there. Finding anchor spots has been a little bit more difficult, not as successful as the Holiday Farm, but we are making progress. Once again, a strong contingent forest landowner asset, dozers, heavy equipment, rolled up there 7 days ago. We've been in a defensive posture on all these fires, and now we're able to take an offensive posture and push containment lines around fires. So I expect continued progress on the Archie Fire. The Thielsen Fire is a fire I have not reported out to you on, north of Crater Lake until now. Moved through Dynamite, sits at about 5,000 acres. That's a challenging ground, beginning to move federal assets and resources into that region. I'll move now to the Oberchain Fire, 20+ thousand acres on the Oberchain Fire. Challenging fire runs, having some confidence on control lines closer to the communities to the northeast and east side of that fire. Open forest land, haven't got into established lines there, focusing on the life safety and starting to be beginning to establish control lines on that fire. I just highlighted finally the Slater Fire that came into us from California. That's a significant fire. We do have resources on that up through Illinois Valley, managed by an incident command team from California, integrating our local resources to support that fire. I'll stop there for one moment to highlight and manage expectations relative to these 16 fires I'm reporting on. These are the 8 fires that I expect will be on our landscape burn until the winter rains fall. Those fires represent close to 1 million acres on the landscape. And we are going to prioritize containment lines where life safety is threatened and push containment lines in deeper into the woods and hold those fires at the minimum acres we possibly can. But to manage expectations, we will see smokes and we will have firefighters on those fires up until the heavy rains of the fall. And that's simply the reality of having that much fire on the landscape. Critically important for us as a state is to get the remaining fires that I'll highlight off the map. And we need to do that aggressively, and we have plans and resources are rolling in from around the nation to help us get there as quickly as possible. I'll start with the Britann fire out of Paisley. That's burning approximately 6,000 acres. We've got resources moving that direction to support that fire effort and begin to establish containment lines. North of Klamath, we have the 242 fire, really making good progress on containment lines there. Local landowner resource contractors, etc., local fire service continue to work closely, making good progress. I would highlight, I've been emphasizing quite a bit during these reports, the efforts of Department of Forestry, and you've heard from Oregon State Fire Marshal representing all the local fire departments. Know that we have partners in federal agencies, including the Forest Service, BLM, Bureau of Land Management, National Park Service, Fish and Wildlife Service, and tribal members, Bureau of Indian Affairs, working closely with us on all these fires, all local resources. Landowner partners, as I've emphasized today, all bringing resources to bear, including contractors, and this makes up our complete and coordinated fire protection system. I'm proud on the east side that I've only named 2 fires that we need off the map. It's been tremendous initial attack success across the board, keeping fires off the map all the way through the Rangeland Fire Protection Associations. So nice work on the east side of the state. The other fires we need off the map as soon as possible is Alameda. We're making really good progress there out of Ashland and Medford, 50% lined on that fire. All the fires on the Coast Range, feeling a lot of confidence in containment lines around all these fires. The North Bank fire out of Coos Bay, Eco Mountain fire that evacuated Lincoln City, lines around that, great progress, great cooperation locally. And then the fire that evacuated Bay City, the Pike fire, again, lines contained around that fire. Now we have to hold all these lines and get these fires off the map. The 2 remaining fires I'll speak to outside of Gaston, power line fire, and then outside of Newburgh, just southwest there in Portland, the Chehalem Mountain fire. So we were able to support those fires with aircraft yesterday with scoopers. We got some clean air just for a little bit, and anytime we see, we're going to put aviation assets in the air to support contain those fires. So that closes the summary. 16 large fires on the map. 8 of them, to be realistic, will be on the map until the rains come, but we're going to continue to make progress. The others, we're going to work hard to get those quickly off the map and mitigate as much smoke and risk to Oregonians as we can. That's the end of report.
Thank you, Chief Graff, and thank you to you and your teams for your incredible service over these last several weeks. Next up, I'd like to ask General Stencil to provide an update.
All right, thank you, Governor. I'll start out giving an update on our primary task forces and then share some of the highlights of our work last night. Starting off with our traffic control points, or TCPs. All of the initially requested TCPs in Jackson Lane and Marion counties will be manned by the end of the day. Altogether, we've got about 100 service members supporting that effort. Additional requests for 11 more TCPs have come in for Lynn and Lincoln counties, which will be manned by about 60 more guardsmen over this weekend. But we expect that number is going to continue to grow with known needs that we learned of today in Clackamas and Washington counties. So we continue to prepare guardsmen for that effort as well. With regard to aviation, we still have 9 aircraft available, 7 of those being Black Hawks, 5 with water buckets, and 2 with medevac capabilities. We stationed a few of them at Hillsborough and Aurora late yesterday in accordance with ODF, with the hopes that the ceilings would be high enough that they'd be able to get some work in, but they never, weather never lifted out, even out in the west side there. So they're all still waiting for mission assignments what the weather does lift. But as we heard earlier, that forecast looks to be IFR probably till about 5 o'clock tomorrow morning. With regard to firefighting support, our 3 125-person pre-trained firefighter teams are mobilized. They're going to start arriving at fire camp tomorrow morning, with the second and third occurring across the weekend and Monday. ODF is now looking at sending them to 3 separate fires in Klamath, Lincoln, and Clackamas counties. The other day I mentioned that we were looking to expand DoD capabilities for ODF on 3 fronts, building additional Oregon National Guard firefighting teams, supporting a request for active duty Army firefighting support, and then also looking at out-of-state National Guard support requests. And all 3 of these are in progress. Mobilization's underway for 2 more additional teams to be placed within 2 weeks. I'm happy to share that through efforts with the National Guard Bureau and Senator Merkley, that we've garnered approximately $700,000 in federal dollars that will go to supporting this training effort. We're also supporting ODF in their request for the active duty Army firefighting support to fight fires on the federal lands. And then lastly, we're also working with the National Guard Bureau and states outside of our region to resource additional firefighting teams. We formally requested 12 20-person crews, and we're hoping to have a response in the next few days on outside states that will be able to support that effort. Our fatality search and rescue team that we stood up a few days ago as we transition to recovery efforts, it's going to be stood up and be reporting to Albany tomorrow with 11 airmen and equipment. And then lastly, I just want to talk about last night, a very busy night with 2 emergency response mission requests. We had 50 Army Guardsmen responding to a request from Providence Willamette Falls Hospital to assist them in their emergency evacuation of ambulatory patients from their facilities. All in all reports is that went very well. And then we also supported the Department of Corrections in transporting adults in custody from the Wilsonville Coffee Creek Correctional Facility to the Deer Creek facility over in Madras. And with that, that concludes my summary.
Thank you, General Stencil. We are incredibly grateful to you and National Guardsmen and women for all of your efforts. Director Phelps, would you please give us an update?
Thank you, Governor. I want to thank all the previous briefers from our state partners, Doug Graff, General Stencil. My gratitude to you, your teams, the emergency responders across the state, our 911 operators, call takers, and dispatchers, and those volunteers who continue to prioritize life safety during this catastrophic wildfire event while risking their own lives. This is an incredible, dangerous situation across the state as we continue to evacuate folks and work to get Oregonians out of danger. I want to note that as the fire response changes, this has a direct impact on our evacuation and sheltering operations. I really appreciate the governor allowing an opportunity to clarify the 500,000 evacuation number. That number does refer to the folks that were in some level of evacuation. Thursday afternoon, we had expanded evacuation zones affecting tens of thousands of people. By late afternoon and into the evening, the number of Oregonians under some level of evacuation notice had jumped to an estimated 500,000 Oregonians, with the evacuation area included more densely populated and urban areas. Thanks to improving weather conditions, overnight, some evacuation areas were changed from level 2 to level 1 notices, which also impact the estimate of those under evacuation notices. As of Friday morning, many people were advised to stay home and remain prepared to evacuate, but not advised to be ready at a moment's notice. These are important numbers to us. They're important numbers to our local emergency management partners, and they're important to the Red Cross to develop capability assessments and plan for how many folks may need some level of assistance. I also understand how important these numbers are to the public. We've got a lot of numbers associated with this disaster, and we're committed to getting these numbers right, and we're going to be working to ensure that every time we release numbers, those numbers are factual and confirmed. I will report that last night, the Red Cross assisted 2,325 Oregonians with some level of sheltering. Most of those folks were able to be sheltered in a non-congregant setting, meaning hotels and motels, and I want to thank our lodging partners for working with the Red Cross and the Department of Human Services here in Oregon to make that happen. We still had over 500 Oregonians in congregate shelters in over 5 locations. This is a really important operation to maintain the safety of folks who've evacuated, and we want to ensure that the Red Cross has the resources they need and the Department of Human Services as our mass care lead state agency to protect folks who've been forced from their homes. Part of this is additional federal and state support through the Emergency Management Assistance Compact. Last night, we received an emergency management declaration, as the governor mentioned. This provides direct federal assistance to our ongoing response operations. In advance of that declaration, FEMA provided 15 tractor trailers with food, water, cots, blankets for immediate distribution in impacted areas. They've also provided an incident management assistance team, and we have requests for search and rescue, mass care, recovery operations, communications, and additional Operations Center management support for both us here in Salem, as well as our local partners and their active emergency operations centers. We've also made requests to other states for Emergency Management Compact, or EMAC, mutual aid assistance, also for mass care, search and rescue, and emergency operations center support. We know we need help. We have asked, and many of these calls for help are being answered. I want to close by saying these fires have already resulted in loss of life, and thousands of structures have been lost. We're dealing with fire-related death, and we're preparing for a mass fatality incident based on what we know and the number of structures that have been lost. As we have more clarity and confirmation of structures that have been lost and fatalities, that information will be provided, but not until we can confirm that information with local fire and law enforcement resources. I want to just reiterate the importance of adhering to evacuation orders. If you're in someplace safe, if you've evacuated and you're someplace safe, stay there. If you're home and you're not under evacuation orders or levels 1 or 2, make sure you're tuned in to official government sources. We also recommend folks register with Safe and Well with the American Red Cross, and this will help us focus our rescue and recovery operations. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Phelps. I think we're ready for questions at this point.
Please remember to say your name clearly to help assist our ASL interpreters. And a reminder to press on the phone, please press 0 to enter the question queue. We're going to go ahead and kick it off with Pat from KGW. Pat, are you there?
Yes, I am. Thank you. I had 2 questions. One, we're talking about all the people coming from across the country to help. There have been other reports, though, that all the resources are stretched very thin. So who's coming and where are they from? And then secondly, we've seen heartbreaking pictures coming out of the little towns of Phoenix and Talent. It's just devastation down there, and I'm sure in very many other places. But what can the government do for those folks who've lost everything? Thank you.
Thanks, Pat. In terms of where folks are coming from, I don't know what happened there. Pat, in terms of where are folks coming from, we have a couple of sources. I spoke with the president last night and his chief of staff. They are working at ensuring that we have National Guards, men and women from around the country that are available to assist with firefighting efforts. The Department of Defense has a battalion trained in firefighting. We've requested their support as well. So, as you said, we're stretched very thin because of the dire circumstances all along the West Coast. But certainly the White House and our federal government have been responsive to our needs and working at getting us the people power that we need. In terms of the second question, Director Phelps, do you want to respond to that, please?
Thank you, Governor. Yeah, this is going to be a long-term recovery operation. Right now, I need to emphasize we are still very much in response and life safety mode, protecting those that have evacuated, keeping them safe. The long-term recovery is going to last years. We know this because we have far too many recent examples from our friends down in California with the Camp Fire down in Paradise and some other devastating fires that they're still working to recover from. When we request a federal major disaster declaration, which will be our next step in requesting disaster assistance through FEMA from the president, this will likely include individual assistance to those that were uninsured or underinsured and help provide resources to get those folks back on their feet. I do want to encourage Oregonians, as soon as you've got confirmation or believe that you've lost significant property or you've had extreme damage, reach out to your insurance provider to begin working on those claims. Insurance companies are already reaching out, I know, to individual policyholders in some of the impacted areas, but we also want Oregonians to be very aware that every disaster, especially catastrophic disasters like this, bring people out who are looking to commit fraud. Don't let yourself be taken advantage of. Verify who it is you're speaking with, if they're from a reputable organization. And if you feel you've been taken advantage of, you need to report that information.
And Governor Brown, Doug Graff here. I might expand a little bit more detail on the nation's effort to support Oregon, and it has been aggressive. We currently have a Southwest Incident Management team in Oregon on the Riverside fire. We're deployed Southeast Incident Management team on the Bratton fire. Moving in, when I talk about a national system in play, we pull overhead fire management from all over the nation. We have strike teams of engines coming in from New Mexico, Wyoming. I have a Florida incident commander managing and support with our local resources on the Eco Mountain fire. It is typical for this, large fire seasons that we've had in the past for us to have 40 different states represented in Oregon fighting fire. So it truly is a national effort to make this work. We also have Canadian resources coming down relative to strike teams of engines and 20-person hand crews. Thank you.
Thank you.
With KVAL, Rick, are you there?
In Oregon fighting fire, so it truly is a national.
Yes, Rick from KVAL in Eugene, Springfield, just outside the Holiday Farm fire. Wondering if any clarification can be made as far as the number of National Guard troops that will be deployed in the coming days. We know that 300 are coming to Holiday Farm area over the next couple of days. Want to know if there's any future incident.
We're getting some feedback, so could you please make sure that you mute your phones? General Stencil, could you respond to Rick's question, please?
Sure, Governor. Rick, in addition to that one-person team, we've got two other teams that are going out there. Again, I just know that they're going to Klamath, Lincoln, and Clackamas counties. I'll defer to Mr. Graff in terms of specifically what fires they will be going to, as well as the additional two teams that we're looking at least another 10 days out before they're available. Doug, can you add to that?
Yes, General. Doug Graff here, Department of Forestry. We'll be deploying those three pre-trained groups of National Guard teams are deployed to those three fires mentioned: Eco Mountain Holiday Farm, and then Riverside and the corresponding fires around Riverside identified as the North Cascade Complex. That's where the trained troops are going. We'll also have, I would highlight, the traffic control points to ensure the safety and management of access on these fires. Those will be scattered throughout the state on all these fires. So we'll have significant National Guard presence on much of the fires across the state.
And Rick, I'd also add, General Stencil again, that in addition to that, we got the rotary wing aircraft and the H-60s that are going to be sharing in that effort with water buckets.
Thanks, Rick, for the question. Next, we're going to go to Dirk with OPB. Dirk, are you there?
I'm here, thanks. I wanted to clarify something that the governor said. You mentioned, people not blocking the roads for folks that absolutely need to leave. Are you all saying that people should not sort of self-evacuate? I know there's been a lot of concern in the Portland metro area as the levels have creeped closer to the city. Are you saying people need to remain in place if they're not under a formal evacuation warning?
That's what we're asking, Dirk, that if people are safe and not under any level of evacuation, that they stay where they are and that they remain in contact with local emergency management officials through their local county website in order to stay attuned in terms of what's happening in the area. Director Phelps, do you want to add anything, please?
Thank you, Governor. Thank you, Dirk, for that question. I want to be very clear about what these evacuation level means. Certainly, if you're not under a level 1, level 2, or level 3 evacuation, you need to stay in tune with what's happening around you and stay in touch with official sources and with our media partners. A level 1 evacuation, we call that get ready. That means make sure you've got your go kit together, that you know your evacuation route, and that you're prepared to leave if you need to do so. There's no reason at a level 1 to evacuate your home at that point. I will say folks have smoke sensitivities and other issues that may force them to find someplace else to stay outside of the smoke, and I totally get that. We wouldn't discourage that. A level 2 is a get set. This means your next step is to go. If you haven't prepared yet, make sure you've got food, water, important medical papers, medication in your vehicle, and you're ready to go. If you don't have transportation from your location, you need to arrange that. You need to find some way to get out of your community and know where you're going to go, whether a friend's house who is a friend or family member who is away from the impact site and out of the evacuation area, or an official shelter location. And the Red Cross has been doing an incredible job of getting that information out to folks. Level 3 means the time to prepare is over. Now is the time for action. You must leave your home. What you have with you, that's what you're going to have when you evacuate. So level 1, level 2, urge folks to stay where they are, but be ready. Level 3 means leave. And these are fast-changing boundaries. What your level is today may not be what it is tomorrow.
Just to clarify, Governor, did you say you spoke personally with the president last night and that you're confident that resources are on their way and manpower will be here?
I did speak with the president last night. He promised us all of his support, and we are working to make sure that all the resources and people power that we need is provided.
Thank you.
Next, we'll go to Hillary with the Oregonian. Hillary, are you there?
Yeah, sorry, I just had to get back to unmute. So can one of you please elaborate for us on, you said that there are known to be people who are believed to be casualties, but can you elaborate for us on the number of people who are believed to be missing at this point? What handle does the state have on that number?
So thank you, Hillary, for the question. Right now, I know that Oregonians are very eager to seek information. Our firefighters are focused on saving lives, and we want them to stay focused. As we get more information regarding missing persons and fatalities and structure damage, we will certainly provide that information, but it is going to take time. Director Phelps, do you have anything that you want to add to that?
Yeah, so right now we're working to deconflict what we've heard from the county level of folks that have been reported as missing with those that have been registered either in shelters or on the Safe and Well website. Again, as we have more clarity and confirmation of what those missing or unaccounted numbers are, we'll provide that information.
And Hillary, obviously, the
Okay, thanks a lot.
reports that you've seen are initial reports, and numbers are likely to change.
I appreciate that. And we just had one follow-up question. We've heard that 3,000 people are working on these fires. Could someone provide just a high-level breakdown of where they are from? I know they're small teams from all over, but high level, how many are Oregon, ODF, et cetera?
Chief Graff, can you provide us with a general breakdown? Or if not, we can get that information to Hillary later.
Yeah, Doug Graff, Chief of Fire Protection. That's a real rough number to estimate, but I would articulate it this way: the large majority of those firefighters on the ground now are from Oregon.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Hillary. And next we'll go to Keaton Thomas. Keaton, are you there?
Hi, yeah, thank you so much. I wanted to circle back to, I think it was Chief Graff who said this earlier, but just related to the, I guess, outlook moving forward, can you talk to us about how you prioritize and what sort of help will come to the large fires as you kind of, I don't know if the word is extinguish, but kind of get a handle on some of the smaller fires? How do you kind of prioritize, and how does that help you later on? I know the large fires aren't going to be going anywhere anytime soon.
Yeah, thank you for that question. Doug Graff here, Chief of Fire Protection. Every day at 1000 hours, I sit with my fire management peers across the region, that's Oregon and Washington, and we prioritize each fire, and then we distribute resources accordingly based on that prioritization. And we have to do that through this multi-agency coordination group that myself and Mariana from OSFM sit on, representing Oregon's interests when we are in a resource deficit. Not every fire is going to get every helicopter, every crew that they're asking for, and we have to prioritize. So we sit every day, 1000, and myself and Mariana with my peers in the wildland to the north in Washington, and her peer with the State Fire Marshal there, along with our federal partners. That's the U.S. Forest Service, BLM, the Park Service, Fish and Wildlife, and BIA. All have jurisdictional responsibility on these fires, and we'll triage that on a daily basis.
Keaton, next we have a written question from Dan at Coin. We're hearing from frustrated viewers wanting to know where the front lines of the fire are around Clackamas County in relation to Molalla and Estacada.
Chief Graff, can you respond to that question regarding the Clackamas fire situation?
I can. Yesterday was a very dynamic day. We were hoping the winds would not be as aggressive, and we would have better success, particularly on the Riverside fire, and then the Beachy fire on the west side. But we certainly felt those winds pushing from the east, and it continued to drive both of those fire fronts that sit at about 36 miles wide, running from north to south. And they pushed towards the communities of Estacada, Molalla, Colton, Scotts Mill, and Lyons to a lesser degree, mostly to the northern part of that fire front, which received those Columbia River east winds late into the day. The fire jumped over Estacada, spotted fire over that town. So we were in a full-blown urban interface fire fight in Estacada. Colton, the fire stopped short, 211 on that front. It looks like we did have some spots over the 211. It stopped short of Molalla. Looks to be about 4 miles short of Molalla. On Scott Hills, I think right up against the community, we were close there with some spot fires jumping that perimeter and pushing towards Scott Mills. And further south of Scott Mills, there was less of a push to the west on that fire front. And I would just emphasize and contextualize that's 36 miles of fire front that was pushing that direction. So we were fortunate, very fortunate, that the winds did not sustain another day like we've been experiencing those 4 days.
Great. Thanks, Dan, for that written question. Next, we'll go to Hank with Willamette Week. Hank, are you there?
Yeah. How has COVID impacted the firefight? And also, can Governor Brown expand upon her comments that she made yesterday about how global warming will lead to possible like this in the future?
So I made a comment yesterday in my remarks about the impact of climate change on Oregon, our country, and the entire world. I think there's no question that the changing climate is exacerbating what we see on the ground. We had, as we mentioned earlier, unprecedented weather event with winds and temperatures. In addition, we added a ground that has had a 30-year drought. So it made for extremely challenging circumstances and has certainly exacerbated the situation. I think it's incumbent upon all of us to be aware that climate change is going to impact how we live, our economy, our culture, and that we all need to be making changes accordingly. We're going to see that most directly, frankly, in Oregon, in our winters, in our summers, in our winters with low, reduced snowfall, and our summers with drier or sporadic rainfall and wildfire. So it is going to continue to challenge Oregon, the country, and the world. I am committed to taking action as Oregon's governor and continuing to proceed with our climate action executive order and asking our state agencies to continue that work. I'm hoping the legislature can partner with me in that work as we move into the 21 legislative session. And your other question was, Hank, I'm sorry.
Yeah, thank you so much for that thorough answer. And then the other question was about how COVID has impacted fire.
It's a great question for our Deputy Fire Marshal, Mariana Ruiz Temple, who's not here, but I suspect one of the other folks can pick it up. But the Oregon State Fire Marshal's Office, and combined with the Oregon Health Authority and the Department of Forestry, worked at the outset of the fire season to create COVID modules. Essentially, on each fire team, experts that can address the COVID situation. I saw this most clearly in the work on the Mosier Creek fire a couple of weeks ago. They had someone in charge of ensuring that our firefighters are in good health and that if they're experiencing any COVID signs that they are isolated. Fire camps look substantially different than they did even a year ago. I've traveled to a number of fire situations, and it looks like a little city that is built in tents. With COVID, that has changed dramatically, and not only are tents spread out, but fire camp is totally and completely different. I'm proud to report that in thousands of firefighters that we've had over the last few weeks so far, and I should probably knock on wood at this point, we have not had any experiences of COVID in our firefighting efforts.
Thanks, Hank. We just have time for a couple more questions. We'll go next to Les with the Salem Reporter. Are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Governor, I know things are still in the great transition, but you have thousands of people who have lost their homes. What's your administration's estimate of the number of people, the number of families who likely are going to need temporary housing? And should Oregonians brace to see FEMA trailer camps?
Thanks for the question, Les. Right now, I'm not prepared to give any specific numbers, but we know that hundreds, perhaps thousands of Oregonians have lost their homes. This is going to be an extremely challenging situation. This exacerbates our already challenged housing situation throughout the state. Like any emergency, these particular fires have truly impacted our historically underserved communities. I'm absolutely committed to making sure that these families have the resources and the tools they need to recover. As Director Phelps mentioned, as we move forward and request additional federal assistance, it is likely that we will get emergency assistance for those families that are either not insured or underinsured. Director Phelps, do you want to add anything to that, please?
Yes, thank you. There's still a lot of assessments to be done. We know roughly the fire perimeters, and we have tax ID lots and some of that information. We'll need to do a much deeper dive once it's safe to do so with regards to primary residences that have been lost and other types of structures that have been lost. But this is going to be a long-haul effort. We'll be relying certainly on federal support through FEMA and the housing, long-term housing support they can provide. Also, our housing state recovery function will be fully engaged in meeting that intermediate and long-term housing need. We're still very much in the response mode, and as we begin to transition more into the long-term recovery, we'll be working with private sector, nonprofits, state, federal, and local agencies to make sure everyone has a safe place to stay.
Les, it's really going to be, as I've said before, truly an all-hands-on-deck moment, and we're absolutely committed to getting Oregon families the housing and shelter that they need.
Thanks, Les. And last question goes to Dick Hughes. Dick, are you there?
Yes, thank you very much. I have two questions, so if you answer one or both. The first question for the Governor is about if she could describe more of her conversation with the president, the tone, and what was said and stuff. We don't often get to hear about the governor talking with the president. And then my other question, probably for Doug Graff, is the governor mentioned examples of creativity and innovation on the fire lines. And could we just hear some examples of that creativity and innovation? Thank you very much.
Thanks, Dick. I spoke with the president about 6:15 last night. He either was on Air Force One or getting onto Air Force One. I explained to him that the situation on the ground was extremely dire, that at that point in time we had roughly 40,000 Oregonians who had been evacuated. The extent of the fire damage, he said, you have all of our support. Please let us know what you need, and God bless Oregon. Chief Graff, do you want to pick up the second question in terms of creativity on the fire lines?
Yeah, Doug Graff here, Chief of Fire Protection. I think I would point to new technologies for the front end of that. We're deploying infrared technologies, not only for military assets where that has typically been housed at, but in the private sector, and then landowner investments. The last couple of years, we invested in infrared technology on the state-owned aircraft, so we'll be able to fly above the smoke and see through the smoke. So technology certainly advancing situational analyst technologies. So when I described how close the fire was to those communities, we've got great situational intelligence from new systems being developed as best as we can get real time on the fire. So I'm able to report out on those types of details when asked that question. I think the other unique situation here in Oregon, and you don't see in many of the states, landowners have a responsibility to fight fire on their ground. So when I speak to those resources that are made available on the fire front, that's unique to Oregon. And what that affords us is when the national system is stretched, we still have those resources in this state to pull some from. So there was a armada of dozers and heavy equipment that rolled into Holiday Farms and Archer awaiting assignments on the coast in Lincoln City for Eco Mountain and Pike. And that's all about really serving Oregonians by being in partnership with Oregonians in a fundamental way to run fire protection in the state. So those are some unique expressions of how we operate here.
Thank you very much, and thank Governor and Chief Graff and everyone else for all that you're doing.
Thank you, Dick. With that, I think we're going to close. Just want to ask all Oregonians to be on alert due to changing weather and fire conditions through the weekend, and please be safe out there.